Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Now let's look at what is a business model. A business model is basically how a company has structured itself, organized itself to conduct its activities. Because the ultimate objective of the business or the company is to create value for its customers, but create the value in such a way that it also makes some profits. And therefore it has to structure itself in a certain way, in a certain disciplined way. And that's overall structure, the way it has created its functioning and operations and people, is called a business model. In my very first module, I talked about the value chain, which was first defined by a very famous person called Michael Porter. So the picture on the screen, which I also shared in module 1, is a very simple depiction, and we'll look at examples in a while, of how you can define the value chain or the business model of a company. So if you look at the arrow, it starts with creating value for customers, and then if you look at the bottom row, these are the core functions. So there's inbound logistics, where the company is sourcing a lot of raw material. Then there is operations, where they're making the final product or the final service. Then there's outbound logistics. Then there's marketing and sales. And then there is the customer service, depending on what the product is. If you're in a service business, there may not be any of the first few steps of inbound logistics, operation, and outbound, but it is just the service itself. Similarly, if you're in the commodity business, you may have inbound logistics and outbound logistics. There may not be any operations because it's not processing and creating something new. Similarly, if you're in an aggregator business, you may not have the inbound logistics, operation, outbound. You may just have the service, which is the core activity. So these are the core activities. But then there are a lot of support activities. For example, to do the core activities well, you need IT infrastructure, which needs to be managed efficiently so that it doesn't cost too much, it's not inefficient, it's not ineffective, but it adds to the value addition. There is management of the people, the employees, the human resource management. People are doing the core activities. They also need to be managed, motivated, recruited, paid, given a growth in a certain way that they conduct the core activities well and the value is created for the customer. And then they may have the whole office network, which needs to be managed, or warehouse network, or factory network. There's also a lot of buying, not just the selling, not just the marketing and sale, but there's also managing of the suppliers. A big automotive manufacturer or a big FMCG manufacturer may have thousands of suppliers. An e-commerce firm may have hundreds of thousands of suppliers. They all need to be managed well. Otherwise, the company will make losses. So this is one way of depicting a business model. Because if you want to study a company, assuming that you are a shareholder or you're an employee which is deciding whether to join a company or not, you would like to understand how does the business operate, what is the business model. And this is one framework to understand and kind of depict the business model, the operating model of the company, on how it's creating value for the customer and profits for the shareholders. But there are other ways of depiction as well. So in the early stages of the business, there is a framework called the business model canvas, which was defined by a famous person called Alexander Osterwalder, whose name is there. You can look up his website. But the way this depicts the business model is, it starts with the box in the middle, which is called, what is the value proposition of the company? So if you're an e-commerce firm, what is the value proposition? If you're an automotive firm, what's the value proposition? If you are a software or artificial intelligence firm, what's your value proposition? How is your value proposition unique? How is your value proposition different from anybody else? Why should anybody buy your product or service? All of that needs to be clearly defined in the value proposition, which is a central box. And then on the right side, you see how you deliver the value proposition to the customer. And therefore, you have the customer channels, you have got the customer key elements, and on the left side, you've got all the activities which actually deliver the value proposition. And one of the things you may notice in this model is this whole thing about partnership, because both on the customer side, a company will need partners. It could be a distributor partner, a retail partner. And on the sourcing side, the procurement side, the value creation side, you may have suppliers who are your partners. This canvas, this framework helps you define all the partners of the company, as well as the delivery model, which is the customer channels and relationship, and the sourcing model. And if you look at the bottom, is basically the financial aspects of the business model. What is the revenue? What's the revenue stream? And the revenue stream is not just one number. It could be over years. It could be across products, brands, categories, geographies, countries. It could be in rupees, dollars, but also units. It could be by customer. So the revenue part of it. And then we've got the cost part of it. Different kinds of cost. Cost of production, cost of marketing, cost of selling, cost of people, cost of infrastructure, cost of IT. So this is another version of defining the business model of different businesses or companies. One of the most important part of the business model is the customer pricing. Because the customer doesn't actually see what's inside the company. Because a company may be doing a lot of things in its offices, in its warehouses, in its factories, doing things on the servers, the computers, which the customer doesn't see, as the customer doesn't care. Customer sees a product or a service. It could be a car, it could be a t-shirt, it could be a pen, it could be a phone. It could be a service like a airline seat, train seat, hospital bed, a movie theater seat. So the customer sees a product or a service which he wants, but the important thing that he also sees is the price which he has to pay. And therefore the business or the company have to be very clear on what is the customer pricing model, assuming that you have a certain product or many products or many brands or many categories or many services. the company has to clearly define the customer pricing. And that's called the customer pricing model. And it's a very strategic decision and it has many different variations. So what drives customer pricing? How does a company think and create a customer price? So there are many internal drivers within the company which drives the external price to the customer. For example, the business strategy. What is the strategy of the business? A very luxury car maker, like a Rolls-Royce, Mercedes, or BMW, or any of those luxury cars, or perfumes, luxury perfumes, or luxury apparel, or luxury accessories, or jewelry. Their business strategy may be to serve the premium customers. On the other hand, you may have cheaper cars, cheaper apparel, cheaper accessories. And the business strategy of these companies would be to serve the masses, which may not be able to afford the premium products. Even in an aeroplane, you may have different tiers of seating: economy class, business class, first class. In a hotel, you may have different kinds of rooms. So there will be luxury hotels, and there will be not so luxury hotels, and there will be cheap mass hotels. So it depends on what the business strategy of the company is. Then the price driver is how much does it cost to produce. If a car costs 100,000 to produce, that often decides the price, because you cannot sell a 100,000 cost of production car at 80,000. You probably want to sell it at 110,000 or 120,000. Then is the customer and the customer affordability. Like I said, which customer are you targeting? The rich? Not so rich? What is the affordability of that customer or that customer segment? All of this will decide the company's pricing model. And then more importantly is the competition. All companies have competition. All businesses have some competition. In some industries, some sectors, there may be two big players. And in some, there may be many big players. And some, it may be very fragmented and many small players. Or it may be a segment where there are few big players and many small players. For example, if you look at office software, what you use in your PC or a laptop, chances are there's one very big player, a very big global player, and everybody buys the office software from that company. It may be Microsoft. Similarly, if you're looking at maybe supply chain in the US, it may be a couple of players called FedEx and UPS. If you're looking at cold drinks, soft drinks, beverages, it may be very two large players, Coca-Cola and Pepsi. If you're looking at smartphones, it could be Samsung, Apple. But each of the companies is looking at what the competitors are doing, because they have to justify their price versus the competitor's price based on the competitor's offering and value proposition. So these are the pricing drivers. Now, let's get into what are some of the pricing strategies that companies adopt. How are the customers required to pay for the product or services? So there are several types. For example, one is cost plus. And these are typically used by large companies for commoditized buying or selling. For example, wheat, rice, vegetables, fruits, sugar, etc. You may buy it at 10, and therefore the cost is 10, and you may sell it at 10 plus 2, which means cost plus a certain profit. So that's called cost plus pricing. It could also be for manufactured products, such as it costs you 100 rupees to make and you sell it at 120. Cost plus a certain margin or a certain profit. On the flip side, it could be value-based pricing. So you're not working from the cost, you're looking at the value it offered to the customer. For example, a bottle of water, a normal bottle of water, it may cost you 10 rupees to produce the bottle and the water inside the bottle. If you did a cost plus pricing, you'd say, my cost is 10 and I'll sell it at 10 plus 2. That's cost plus. But the same bottle, if you're selling it at a high price restaurant, or you're selling it in an airline, in an aircraft, in the air, water is not so easily available. But passengers may feel thirsty. And therefore, you may not price that bottle of water at 10 rupees plus 2 rupees. You may say, okay, it's worth 100 rupees in flight, because the passengers will pay 100 rupees for a bottle of water because it's not easily available. This is a value in flight hydration. Or in a very premium restaurant where there's a lot of ambience, the same bottle of water which you can buy in the store at 12 rupees, you may have to pay 100 rupees because you are drinking that water in a very premium place. That's value-based pricing. Freemium pricing is where you give some of it free, but then if you want more of it, you have to pay for it. And this is very usual in software kind of products. So you can get some of the features free. But if you want more features, you have to pay for it. So freemium is a combination of two words called free and premium. So some of it is free, after that is premium. For example, many of the YouTube, LinkedIn, software, apps, etc., some of the features are free, some of the usage is free, but if you want more or you want better features, you have to pay for it. That's freemium. Then you have subscriptions. In the physical world, it could be a newspaper subscription. You're subscribing to a newspaper or a magazine. You pay for it monthly or annual, and you get the product or the service for a month or a year. And it's very common in the digital space, especially entertainment. So OTT platforms like Netflix, etc., you pay a monthly subscription or an annual subscription and you get the service. You can watch movies for a month or a year. Similarly for telecom or for your phone, these are subscription-based pricing models. Moving on, then there's pay-per-use. So you use it, you pay it. So if you're going for a movie, you buy one ticket for one movie. So you've used the movie hall once and you paid for it once. So every time you use it, you pay for it. You go to a hotel and you stay for one night, you pay for one night. You want to go to a train or a bus or an aeroplane usage, one trip, which means one use, you pay for it once. And part of paper use is also, and you can read it on the screen, it's called dynamic pricing, which is a subset, which basically means if the demand goes up, the prices can go up. So the pay-per-use price can go up. For example, when there's a lot of rush for taxis and rides, the taxi operator or the ride operator can do what is called surge pricing. Similarly in airlines, when there's peak demand in the holiday season, the price of the air ticket goes up, and when it's a lean season, nobody's traveling because everybody's busy, prices go down. Same with hotel bookings. Demand goes up, prices goes up. That's dynamic pricing. Demand goes down, prices go down. Movies. If it's a big star movie, for the same seat in the same movie theater, because the movie has a big star and is a very famous movie, price goes up. But in the same movie theater, in the same seat, if it's not such a good movie, price goes down. So that's dynamic pricing, which is part of pay-per-use pricing. Penetration pricing, the next one, is when a company has launched a new product or wants to enter the market. And in the early days, for 1 month, 2 months, 1 day, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, they price it artificially low to the extent that they are even making losses because they want to penetrate the market, get the customers to use it. And companies may make a lot of losses as they want to penetrate the market. That's called penetration pricing. Then we've got bundle pricing. For example, you may buy a shampoo and a conditioner, a pen with a refill, a shaving razor with some blades, a printer with some cartridges. So these are called bundle pricing. Now there are certain legal restrictions on that because one needs to be careful, companies need to be careful that they are not forcing a customer to buy a bad product or a poor selling product by bundling it with a fast moving product and forcing the customer. That's not appropriate. But a natural bundling, sometimes you may have 2 products bundled together. If you buy 1 product, it's 100 rupees, but if you buy 2 products which is bundled, that may be at 80 rupees. Because you bundle. So these are bundle prices. Moving on, we come to skimming pricing, which is kind of the opposite of penetration pricing. What happens here is the company launches a very good product at a high price. A new smartphone with a new chip or a new feature, new design, or better specifications. And it launched at a high price, let's say $1,000. So the people who really love that brand, love that product, for example, an Apple phone or the latest Samsung phone, they're very keen to get their hands on the phone as early as possible, and they're willing to pay a premium. That's called skim. So the market is skimmed, which means the company has launched the product at a high price. But then very quickly, the prices dropped. Because then it attracts a lot of other customers who are willing to wait. They're not in a hurry to buy at the high price, but they're willing to wait and buy when the prices come down. Also, what happens is, especially in the technology domain, technology is always improving. So you may have a version 10 of a product launched at a certain price, but when version 11 comes in, version 11 is launched at a higher price and version 10 goes down. And this is very common in smartphones or cameras or any of the gadgets where prices keep dropping very fast as newer and newer, better and better models come in. So that's called skimming prices. Then there is called psychological pricing. For example, you're playing with the customer psychology. It's not always a good thing because you cannot sustain it. But for example, instead of pricing a product at $10 or 10 rupees, you price it at 9.99. So 9.99 may psychologically seem cheaper than 10. It's actually a 1 paisa difference or 1 cent difference. But it may seem cheaper than a 10, or 99.99 may sound cheaper than 100. So these are psychological pricing. Volume-based pricing The next one is more you buy, the less you pay per unit. So if you buy a small pack of soap, shampoo, water, beverage, whatever, or biscuits, or cookies, ice cream, wheat, rice, processed food, the per unit of the small size may be 100, but if you buy a larger size, the per unit cost may come down from 100 to 90. Also for business to business, when companies are buying from other companies, more you buy, you get what is called bulk discount. So that's called volume-based pricing. And then we've got very specialized kind of pricing, which is called open book pricing. When you're doing very large, complex project, like building a long road, which may cost $1 billion, thousands of crores, building a large bridge, or doing some project, civil construction, or power plants, or just doing a big supply chain project. The supplier may say, okay, I'll open my books to you, and you give me a fixed margin of 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%. So what will be the cost? The supplier will show the cost to the customer, but agree upfront that the customer will pay 10%, 5%, 15% commission on top of the cost. The difference between cost plus pricing and open book pricing is that in a cost plus pricing, it's usually mass produced, consumer goods, etc. The customer doesn't know the cost, but the company sets the pricing on a cost plus basis. But in an open book pricing, which is basically complex projects, the customer will get to see what the exact costs are. But the customer commits to give a margin on top of the open book pricing. So these are what are called pricing strategies, which is one of the most important driver of the overall business model, because most companies will work backwards from the price realization, the pricing strategies, the revenues, etc., to build their business models in terms of core activities, the people, the IT, the network, etc. Now, how do you create a new business model? There's an existing business model. There's an existing value chain. Whichever way you have captured the business model using Michael Porter's framework or the business model canvas or some other canvas, you have understood how the company adds value, creates value, how the company captures that value, what is the revenue stream, and therefore working back over the cost and different activities the company does, and then generates some profit. So if a new company wants to come in to an existing market, or an existing company wants to reinvent and make itself better, how does a new business model emerge? Essentially, the business model should be anchored to a superior value proposition. Now, a company can always, within an existing business model, make some changes. So change the factory a bit, change the product specification, change some people, change the warehouse a bit, but the business model has not changed. Activities, prices, products have made some changes in terms of incremental improvement, but a whole new business model by either a new company or a company which is reinventing and transforming itself is best anchored around a superior value proposition. And the superior value proposition has to be defined in terms of what the customer sees, not what is happening inside the company, not whether one office is changing or a warehouse is changing or a new machine has come in or new people are being hired. The value proposition has to be visible to the customer. And the value proposition has to be defined in terms of doing something better for the customer, or something cheaper for the customer, or something faster for the customer, or something more satisfying for the customer. For example, If a motorcycle company creates a slightly better motorcycle, it's still a motorcycle company. It has not reinvented itself. It has not created a new business model. It's doing every year, every quarter, it's doing something different, but not really a new business model. But now, if the two-wheeler company launches a four-wheeler or a battery-powered electric vehicle two-wheeler, they are very different, because let's take the case of an electric battery-operated two-wheeler versus the combustion engine two-wheeler. It's a whole different value proposition for the customer. It's probably more expensive, but there are more savings, it's less polluting, and so on. So, for a company, whether it's a new company or an existing company which is transforming itself, to change and reinvent itself starts with the company, with the customer. So if you look at a lot of new business models that have come in, for example, the aggregator business model, the aggregator platforms. If you look at the commerce side, the retail side of it, earlier, decades back in US and many years back even in India and even today, there are small stores in every neighborhood where people bought consumer goods from. So that's a business model. Small stores run by families employing a few people and storing a few products. And then the big stores came in, like Walmart or D-Mart in India or Star Bazaar or Carrefour in Europe. So they changed the business model, because suddenly it's no longer many small stores, it's one mega store. Storing not just 5,000 or 10,000 items, but maybe storing 100,000 items. So the whole business model changed from small store to mega store. A lot of automation would have come in. And then Amazon or Flipkart came in. And suddenly there's no store at all. It's still retailing, but everything is faster, cheaper, better. Something has changed. The whole new business model has changed. And if you look at India just now, so there's a delivery model. So these e-commerce models have come in with deliveries the next day. Now suddenly a lot of companies have come in with not the next day delivery, but a 5 or 10 or 15 minutes delivery, like Blinkit or Zepto in India. So these are the evolution of the business. It's still retailing, it's still trading business, retail business, but it's gone from a business model with many small stores to few large stores to digital stores, and digital stores with 1, 2, 3 days of delivery time to 5 minutes quick service platforms. So these are business model changes. Same with the music industry. It went from radio music, which you could not store, so you had to listen to what's coming over the radio. And then it went to records, vinyl records, which some of you have seen. Then it went to tapes, cassettes. Then it went to MP3 CDs, MP3 DVDs. Then flash memory, where you could store it in a small device with flash memory. Then you store it into a phone. Then it went to cloud-based streaming services. These are all business model changes driven by superior customer value. For example, in a record, you could store maybe 1 song to 10 songs. But today in your phone, you could store 1,000, 10,000 songs. And if you're using a cloud service like Ghana, Amazon Music, any of those OTT music platforms, you have access to millions of songs. So it's faster, better, cheaper, more satisfying. And the business model changes, the technology changes, the way the company operates changes. The kind of people that are being employed, the kind of production processes that are being employed, the IT infrastructure, the software used, they're all changing. So these are business model creation, disruption, changes, evolution. So with that, please reflect for 3 minutes. Again, think of two different companies. Think about what are their pricing models. How are they different? For example, if you wanted to buy the same t-shirt or the same phone, and you had a choice to buy it from an e-commerce site or a large chain store or a small medium neighborhood store, how are the business models of those three companies, those three retailers different? And how are they pricing it? And which one would you prefer? Would you prefer to not travel too far, go to your neighborhood store and just pick it up by looking at it? Or do you like to travel and go to a mall or a big store and look at it and pick it up? Or just like to go online and without touching, feeling the product, buy it online at a discount? Reflect and write down in your course journal for 3 minutes. So this is the end of the module. Thank you. Namaskar.